Good afternoon. First of all, let me just tell you what CocaCola Founders is. CocaCola Founders is a platform where we start at pre-seed and work with founders around the world to co-create startups. And I'll talk a lot more about that. But before I do, let me ask you a quick question. How many people have kids in the room? Kids, yeah. So last week, I took my kids. I've got 3 daughters. Took them to Disney World in Florida. And it was all fun. If you've ever done that, or Disneyland, it's fun. But that place is a germ factory. So unfortunately, I've got a cold and a froggy voice, so I apologize for that in advance. Okay, let's get into it. Actually, before I get into Coca-Cola Founders, I thought it might be interesting to give you the 2-minute version of the Coca-Cola founder story, because I don't think many people know it. And being a part of a company that's over 100 years old, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but it might be interesting, especially for the founders in the room. Okay, first of all, no, this is not a hipster from Berlin. This is John Pemberton. John Pemberton was the original founder of the Coca-Cola Company in 1886. And, 1886, this is 20 years after the Civil War in this country. The country was rebuilding itself. And Pemberton was able to create a product, a drink that didn't taste like anything else. And at the time, there weren't many non-alcoholic drinks. So coffee, tea, water, lemonade, root beer, that kind of thing. So he was able to create something that filled a need, a gap. But his business model was very complex. In fact, the way it was designed was he, mixed his concentrate, his liquid, with that guy's water and dispensed that product out of his machine to his customer. Very complicated. So John didn't have direct access to the customer, and very difficult. So, in fact, so difficult that John sold the company a year after he started it to this guy, Asa Candler. Now, Asa is the guy who basically designed the company, or the brand at least that you know of, called Coca-Cola. Asa was the guy who actually developed a new business model where he worked directly with independent bottlers, like a platform model, to put Coke in a bottle, which was actually harder than it sounds. But anyway, he did this, back turn of last century. So, and he also developed many of the iconic things that you think of when you think of Coke, the iconic curvy, what we call the contour bottle, the color red, the Spencerian script associated with the brand, and my favorite actually is the price. For Coca-Cola, they sold one product in one package for one price for almost 70 years, a nickel. So think about how simplified your marketing, your operations can be around that. But anyway, that was Asa Candler. Asa sold the company in 1923 to this guy, Robert Woodruff. Now, Woodruff was an amazing businessman, but he didn't smile very often. It's true, it's very difficult to find a picture of him smiling, believe me. But anyway, so Woodruff was the guy who actually took Coke global. And by 1930, we were in 30 countries, including China. That's a picture of Beijing down below. But he was the guy that made the deal with the Olympics, first brand to partner with the Olympics, again, to go global. And he was the guy that really standardized and integrated all the pieces of the business together to scale. So if you fast forward to today, fast forward $20 billion brands in the portfolio. And that's revenue, not valuation, by the way, but $20 billion brands. Most people are familiar with Coke and Diet Coke, Fanta, Sprite. But we have billion-dollar tea brands, water brands, coffee brands, and so forth. 200 countries. Actually, the company's local in 207 countries. And I'll save a question for the Q&A. The only country that we're not in is in North Korea. So 208 countries, we're at 207. So anyway, 3,500 products in the portfolio, 700,000 people in what we call the Coca-Cola system. Coca-Cola system is actually a mashup of about 300 companies that form this thing that we call Coca-Cola. Super complicated. 24 million customers. 24 million customers. So when you go to buy a product from our company, you don't go to the Coke store, right? You buy it through a retailer. You go to the guy across the street there or down the road, and that's a customer of Coke. But they range from that guy over there to Walmart. That's the size and scale of the customers that we have. But we have 24 million customers. And then the big number, almost 2 billion people drink something from our from our company every day. So 2 billion servings a day is what we do. So massive scale. So what do you do with that in light of this? And actually, I don't really love the last 2 words there, digital transformation, because no one knows exactly what that means. But it's true that there are new business models, new technologies that we would love to adopt or adapt inside of our company, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult when you've designed a company, over a 100-year-old company, to adopt certain technologies and certain things inside of that. So, what do you do with that? CB Insights. We love CB Insights, super fans. This is one of their visuals. I'm sure you saw it, but we don't. Our industry is not alone. Every industry is experiencing this, especially for legacy companies. This is FedEx. It's hard to see. It's a kind of a complex slide, but this is FedEx's homepage, and these are all the startups that are disrupting their, basically their value proposition, all around their business model. So when you look at that, it's tempting to think, well, FedEx just doesn't get it, right? They just don't get it. They're too slow, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I think it really comes down to two, especially in our case, in Coke's case. I'll speak for Coke. The first one is this. It's a great quote. Actually, one of the speakers spoke earlier today and brought this up, but Warren Buffett. In business, I look for economic castles protected by unbreachable moats. Moats, right? So, he looks, as an investor, he looks for companies that have moats built around their competitive advantage. Competitive advantages built around the company so that they can protect them and see them through times of change. So it kind of looks like this from a visual standpoint. There's the company, and then we have this brand equity that surrounds our company. And we have legal processes and systems that protect that company, tax, HR, all these things that protect the company, again, that was built over 100 years ago. So structurally speaking, it's very difficult to get inside of that, across those moats and inside that castle if you're especially an early stage startup, right? But I think maybe the bigger challenge is cultural. And I love this slide because it really illustrates. So we talk about, especially in this kind of context, we talk about the startup ecosystem. We're all very familiar with how it works. You go to Sand Hill Road, there's a sort of a language and a cadence, a rhythm. So if you're in the startup ecosystem, imagine that you're under the sea, right? You're in the ocean-based ecosystem, and there are fish and coral and water and all that stuff, and you're sort of used to that ecosystem. Well, what you may not recognize is that big companies like Coke or other big, Fortune 100 companies have their own ecosystems, and as it turns out, they're very different. So we have our own ecosystems of suppliers, of customers, employees. Remember, we have 700,000 employees. We have over 1,000 factories. All these things that form our ecosystem. So, a couple years ago, we were asked by senior management to develop a platform so that we could work with, founders, early stage startups somehow. How could we do that? So, like us, most big companies are sort of looking at one of three models, or maybe all of the models. We looked at everything, but these are the models. So, should we acquire companies? Should we acquire, early stage or proven companies and bring them into our company to help us adopt? Now, as you know, I'll speak as a non-tech company. Maybe that's better. It's easier for a tech company, but for Coke, that's super difficult. So remember the slide. I'm going to go back. So we're in the desert, and we're going to acquire some fish. What do we do with the fish in the desert? So that's why some of these don't work out, especially acqui-hires, because it's a completely different ecosystem that you're bringing them into. And then accelerator. Almost every big company has tried or has an accelerator going. Now, I'm not knocking accelerators, but accelerators are sort of like speed dating. And inside of a big company, you don't have. It takes time to develop the relationships, prove out that the value is there on both sides. And most accelerators just don't give you the time it takes to do this inside. And again, on the cultural side of things, what do we know about? I'll go back. What is someone in here? How are they going to advise a fish, right? Or advise coral? Or you can imagine they say, well, what is water? All these things that are sort of natural for this ecosystem just don't translate across, right? And then act like. There's this whole industry built around consulting firms going into big companies like Coke and helping them to be more entrepreneurial. And again, not knocking that, but from our experience, those are great, but the incentives are misaligned, right? So our employees are incented to work in this world, whatever the desert world, not work in the fish world. So it's just very difficult to make that happen. So we designed, again, a couple years ago, over 2 years ago, we just started designing a model. We didn't even know what to call it. We didn't call it pre-seed. We didn't call it anything. We just started calling it Coca-Cola Founders. And we've iterated many, many times. We've made lots of mistakes. But let me just walk you through how it works. First of all, we thought oftentimes big companies, big corporates, VCs often don't like, or they advise actually their portfolio companies not to get involved with a corporate too early on because they can really mess it up. Totally agree, totally understand that. But we thought, what if that wasn't the case, at least in terms of Coke? What if we could start very early, pre-seed, maybe right after the MVP, or where there's a sort of shared passion around a common problem? What if we could start very early and partner, and actually co-create? So not try to dominate, not try to, create a win-lose situation with anybody, a VC or founder, but what if we could actually co-create together from the very start? And that's where we started. So the model is based on really two things, starting off on a big industry problem. So not only a problem that Coke has, but an industry problem. And think about it, our value chain, our supply chain is so vast, we cut across multiple industries. So we see big challenges, big billion-dollar markets, if you want to call it a market, or a big billion-dollar challenge inside of many verticals. So we start there, start with a big, we call it a Coke challenge, but really an industry challenge. And and you mentioned it, but from a founder standpoint, this is a chance to get not only pre-seed, seed money. We talked. One of the speakers here this morning talked about how difficult it still is to raise pre-seed. If we could take care of that, so we offer pre-seed, a big challenge, a known market, one that we feel, every day, and we can go deep into that pain and really expose what that pain's like to co-create, a solution with the founders. So let me just give you an example. I've got 3 examples. The first one, actually, the first set of founders that we worked with was actually based in the Bay Area, San Francisco. And this is the challenge that they focus on. We call it out of stocks. And it's very easy to understand. If our product isn't on the shelf, the consumer can't buy it, the retailer can't sell it, there's no value exchange, right? And if you think about all the shelves that we have our products on, that's $1 billion, actually more than $1 billion challenge for us in lost revenue. But again, think about it. Every CPG company, suffers from this or feels this kind of pain, shark bite kind of pain. So the way it works is if there's an empty shelf, that retailer calls Coke or whoever, but in our case, Coke. We send one of our guys out to take our products from the back room, from the warehouse or back of the office up to the front and restock the shelf. The challenge with that is there's no on-demand model for that. So we may get the call on Tuesday, but we don't arrive until Thursday just because that's our route to market. Big challenge. Another one is, again, we have a lot of shelves around the world. We monitor how our products are merchandised or displayed around the world, but we can only do a small sample. Again, think about it, how many shelves we're on. So we hire agencies to help us gain insight into, through these small samples to extrapolate how we're doing in the market. So this startup, they're called Granola. Has anybody ever heard of Granola? Just raised a Series A. Wow, gosh. The founders, we'd love to hear that. So anyway, they started Granola based on this problem, this big Coke challenge, and essentially the challenge around how to staff, on-demand staffing model to do these types of jobs, right? Very unpredictable, on-demand types of jobs. And you can read the numbers there, but we're able to do, just in that last example, we're able to do much more than we could do through our sort of typical way of working with an agency. And really what we look for is, obviously, for revenue, additional revenue, and or productivity savings. And so that's Granola. Now, one of the things that we can do, we found out quite easily, is that we can operate at scale, at global scale. 3/4 or at least half of our revenues come from outside the U.S. So we can actually do this and work directly with the startup communities around the world. That's why we love Startup Grind. To do this same kind of thing outside the Valley, certainly outside the U.S. This is a great example. We partnered with a couple of founders based in Sydney. The challenge that they focused on was our vending business. And when everyone knows of Coke vending machines, when we started that business decades ago, there wasn't a convenience store or a coffee shop on every corner. So having a vending machine, on different corners around the world made sense. Well, today it's not so much, right? So essentially, our vending business is flat. And so what these founders looked at was actually the data that we collect around that vending business. Now, Coke is a beverage company, right? We don't have data scientists on staff. I probably wouldn't even know what to do with a data scientist if we did. So anyway, so what they did is they actually brought on a couple of data scientists and developed a predictive analytics product to help our vending business. And again, keep in mind that this helps our problem, but there are many other companies that serve products through vending machines as well. So the way it works, though, is that our vending machines, once there's vending machine is out of product, one of our guys from the company comes out and puts product in the machine, right? And the way they do it is they have what we call a planogram, right? Just a plan to show how to stock the machine. That's not a machine, but anyway, it gives you an idea how to stock the machine. So what they thought is, what if they could take historical data, real-time data, mash it up, and come up with customized planograms for each machine? And that's what they did. It's called Hivery. The company's called Hivery. And you can see that they launched not even a year ago, and they're scaling quite quickly throughout our company. In fact, we were in Tokyo 2 weeks ago and helping them talk to our bottlers there. So last one, Southeast Asia, or more specifically Vietnam. Again, we were just there 2 weeks ago, but half of the market in Vietnam, I'd say Southeast Asia, but specifically Vietnam, is run by these people. Who are these people? These are wholesalers. So half the market is run by wholesalers. So what we do is we sell our product at wholesale to like that guy who stocks the product and then sells it however he wants to after that. We have no insight, no connection to his end retailers or customers, right? We just drop the product and he sells it. Now, we'd like to have that insight. We'd like to know how our products are selling against other competitors and so forth, but we don't. That's just how it works. So we worked with a couple founders who launched a product in actually November. Sorry, let me go back. Part of the challenge with that is that in Southeast Asia, a lot of these wholesalers are still on sort of old school legacy systems. In other words, they use pencil and paper to track their inventory. Super inefficient, right? But 4G has just come on them. So the founders that we started working with wanted to help solve that problem or help them track their inventory in a more efficient way. So they developed a desktop version of software, think Salesforce kind of thing, but a way to manage their inventory, help them manage their inventory digitally, let's say. They also developed an app for the wholesalers in customer, their outlets or their other wholesalers, to order product through the app in real time. This is, I know it sounds maybe, I don't know, mundane in this country, but this is light years ahead of most other people in that market. And so what they've done, the company's called S3. What they've done, we talked to one of the wholesalers, and she told us that just using this software, just using that app, has doubled her business in less than a month. And anyway, so they're growing like crazy. This gives us, the company, insight in the data. We had never had any insight into or access to the data or insight into what happened to our products or customers beyond that wholesaler. So again, this is something that would be super difficult for us to develop internally, almost impossible. But through this platform, we're able to do this with the founders. Okay, so we launched this about 2 years ago. Through this platform, we've launched 12 companies in 10 countries. But again, the real win-win here is that we're able to do things that would be very difficult or almost impossible for us to do internally. The founders get access to a first customer, big enterprise customer, and pre-seed from day one. Now, this is the end of the deck, but what I think is super interesting is how big this could be. And I don't mean for Coke, but think about all the non-tech companies that could leverage this kind of a platform. And now imagine if they could get together somehow and access their overlapping challenges, problems, and work this way on a similar type of platform. We thought the same thing. So about 3 or 4 months ago, we approached one of our biggest customers, Walmart, and asked them if they'd want to collaborate on this type of platform. And we're doing that with them now. So I don't know, when we think big, we think global, and we think about these big sort of non-tech companies coming together to leverage this type of platform. So with that, I'll move to Q&A if anybody has any questions. But thank you.
Hi, great presentation. Thank you. Okay, is it good? So I'm wondering, I was thinking of the same opportunity of connecting a lot of organizations globally. How do you think that would work? Because you also have a lot of competition, and they do also, and lots of organizations are building, venture branches and all of that. How can we help, make that better?
Yeah. So the question is, how does that work? How big companies can work together to do this?
So you said your last remark that we could do it with a lot of other companies around the world, and they have overlapping needs, but most of them are also competing with each other. So how do you see that working in the future?
Yeah, so it wouldn't work if we're bringing politics or competition in there. So it really is, it has to be a natural fit, and that's why that one example that I talked about, out of stocks. That's a big challenge for Walmart, big challenge for Coke. All the companies that they work with. So we try to find challenges like that, big ones, or marketplaces, new marketplaces that the two companies could work together to create, that kind of thing. Yep.
You mentioned you iterated a lot. How did you actually prototype this?
Live. And so actually, I have to tell you a quick story. How much time do I have? Quick story. So I came to the company to lead design for the company. That's my background. And so I was asked to take this new innovation job by senior management at the company, and I had no idea how to do this. But for me personally, entrepreneur, and so I was all over it. But I went in front of our operating committee, which is like the king and all his subjects, and put up a slide, and you know the phrase, but for them it was very new. It was just 3 words: learn by doing. And I just said, look, you'll probably fire me along the way here, but I have no idea how to do what you're asking me to do, but we're going to do this. We're going to learn by doing. So what does that mean? We're not going to hire McKinsey to tell us how to do it. We're not going to come up with a perfect plan in 2 years and then implement it. We're going to start, and we're going to make a lot of mistakes. So we did that. So quick story. We start off with a bunch of really smart people inside the company. We thought, well, they're smart. They could create startups. Why not? That didn't work. You know the end of that story. That didn't work. The second one was we thought, well, we started Entrepreneur in Residence program. We did that in several countries around the world. Turns out the entrepreneurs got sort of used to the corporate lifestyle. They like going to meetings, drinking coffee, and chilling out, and a paycheck. What is that? So that didn't work, and so we actually asked them to leave the company, exit the company, basically fired them, and started this this iteration of the platform. And that's turned out really well. All the incentives are aligned. We were able to work directly with VCs as well, and it's this the model that's working.
I thought the examples you pointed to were great. I've been an entrepreneur, but now I'm with a big company, and we face similar challenges. I'm curious about the what happened before. You've got these success stories, but I mean, look, there's hundreds of companies probably here today that would love to go solve a problem for Coca-Cola, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen with identifying those, and one is you could sit back and just let people present them to you, but like, what are you bringing to the table other than access? Are you actually putting money in? Are you going to the VCs and saying, hey, here's the things that we're trying to go solve for? What happens before you get to these kind of selected? Because I'm sure there's a whole lot of noise in the system and things that happen before you get to the point where you can put them up on a slide.
So a perfect example, we're launching a team in Turkey next, in Istanbul. And so right now we're building relationships with VCs in Istanbul. It's kind of a small community. But this is why we actually connected with Derek from the first time. And so we're looking for founders that we actually like to work, we always work with repeat founders. So again, we're in the desert. We're not teaching people how to work in the desert. We're trying to learn how to people work in the other ecosystems. So we go into a startup community through something like Startup Grind. We meet the VCs, start looking for founders, start pitching them. Hey, would you be interested in this kind of platform? If they're interested, if the passion is there, they want to do something like this, then we start digging into Coke, and they really understand exactly what these issues are. We offer them pre-seed through a convertible note, so they have funding right up front. We have a whole network of what we call business unit advisors, so specific people inside of our company that are advisors to those people. So anyway, we have a lot of systems in place to do that, but that's how it works.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.